Welcome to the Cyber60 podcast from Lightspeed. I'm your host, Guru Chahal. Today, I'm speaking with Bipul Sinha, co-founder and CEO of Rubrik, who I've had the privilege of knowing for over a decade now. Rubrik has redefined what resilience means for enterprises, especially in this age of transformation under AI. Under Bipul's leadership, Rubrik went public in 2024, and we believe it has already become one of the most influential platforms at the intersection of cyber recovery, data security, and now trusted AI. In today's conversation, we'll cover Bipul's personal journey from an engineer to an investor, and finally to an incredible founder.
I just do what is in front of me. And that's what I've been doing. The world has unfolded for me to go from engineering to venture capital to now at Rubrik.
We'll also cover how Rubrik, the company, has become key to today's AI transformation that so many enterprises are going through.
Being a database guy for so many years at Oracle, the biggest challenge with the database was that your data format and your inference engine were tightly coupled. So you can't take the Oracle data files to SQL Server to interpret. But LLM broke that coupling. So you can bring any data to LLM as long as it is textual, LLM can interpret it. So that dissociation meant that we didn't need to build a data engine like the inference engine. You can get LLM as the inference engine, the power comes to the data. So once we realized that Rubrik has data, identity, and apps information, which platform is more powerful to deliver the AI? Once we realize that, then we say, so let's first build a vector search interface on Rubrik.
And finally, we'll focus on the culture at Rubrik, which is so special. Bipul calls it a framework called Rivet. We'll dig into that and why that's important and has become a competitive advantage for Rubrik as it continues to evolve.
The hardest day for me was in November 2019, when we had a few quarters where we didn't have great results.
Bipul, thanks for joining me.
Good to see you, Guru.
Likewise. We've known each other too long to stay close to the script. So that's not
age ourselves.
That's not what we are going to do today. You have such an incredible story. I would love to start there. Your journey from going to school at IIT to engineering to venture capital to then founding. Each of these steps, I'm sure, was a very conscious decision, or maybe it wasn't. But I'd love for you to walk us through that. How was it a planned career? Was it, hey, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to build great things, and then I'm going to move to investing? Or how did that come about?
I'm three things. I'm a software engineer that allows me to think about how to build things. I'm also an investor and venture capitalist mindset, which actually allows me to look at markets and identify emerging opportunities. And I'm also a founder CEO that is scaling a business that allows me to bring people, culture, scaling. And all three together I believe, is what is required to build a great company. But I didn't plan none of it. In fact, I had the most unplanned career because I truly believe that when the rate of change, particularly in the technology industry, is so high, you can't plan for the future. What you have to do is whatever opportunity is in front of you, you have to maximize that opportunity and leave the rest to whatever happens as the future unfolds. So when I was at Oracle, I had the greatest platform, so to say, to meet the smartest people we were building products together, we were innovating together, we have patents together. I worked with Nutanix founder CEO Dheeraj Pandey. I worked with Snowflake's founders, both Benoit and Thierry. And we worked with numerous people at Oracle who were really, really talented engineers who built Hive at Facebook, who created the data messaging platform at Facebook and Google and other places. And so this kind of like understanding that you have to maximize the present opportunity, you have to maximize whatever you are doing today, creates the future without you even striving for it.
Yeah. Man, that Oracle talent density, I got to say, I should have remembered, but I'd forgotten. That is incredible. Snowflake founders, Nutanix founders, bunch of the really core data infrastructure work at places like Meta and others. These were all people you were working with.
Because back in late 90s and early 2000s, Oracle was the only company that was building a large-scale distributed system based on Linux platform. There was no other distributed system platform company that was focusing on Linux. And that's how Google actually kind of
took a lot of Oracle engineers. Same thing happened at Facebook. Same thing happened at other places. Guru, if you look at like Oracle, that was the original fountain of talent, not just the engineering talent.
Right.
If you look at the leadership talent, CEO talent, it is the same.
Yeah, that's true. Now GCP is run by an ex-Oracle executive and so many others.
And Benioff too.
And Benioff too. That's right. That's right. I totally forgot. The largest software company on the planet is run by an Oracle alum. So you're at Oracle. You're with these absolute legends. You're incredible rate of learning. Why investing? Why walk away from all of that and go into a completely orthogonal field? Not even product management, not even marketing, but all the way into investing.
I wanted to look at business holistically. And although I was a good engineer, I have lots of patents in distributed computing, but I didn't feel like my passion is to just build the technology. I wanted to look at business holistically, from marketing to sales to really understand like why would this business make an impact in the professional lives of our customers. And I asked around, everybody said you need to have a Wall Street experience, you need to have like business school degree. And so I decided to kind of go part-time business school because I was too old for the full-time. So I joined Wharton part-time. And after my first or second semester, my finance professor called me and he said, Bipul, what do you do? I said, I'm a director of engineering at Oracle. He said, why don't you go to Wall Street because you have some unique ability to read financial statements. And that triggered this whole journey of looking at finance. And that's how I kind of first tried investment banking for a summer. And I felt like that was going too far from my roots. So I said, maybe venture capital could be a good combination of business and technology coming together.
And that's when we met. So now we're at Lightspeed. You've already had an incredible start. You're on the board of Nutanix. You're the first check into the company with Dheeraj and company. You had I remember this, we were out on a walk once. You had a very unique relationship with Dheeraj. This is not just an investor. This is not just a board member. It's different. Describe how that journey went. And this is a legendary company today. Just give us a peek into the early days on
I got to know Dheeraj back in 2003 when I first hired him as a senior engineer in my team. And obviously, Dheeraj is an exceptional individual, exceptional entrepreneur. I learned a lot from him. Very quickly, he became manager of a sister team, and we were best friends since. He has this unique ability and unique grit to not just take an idea and refine it, but also take it to the maximum possible value that the idea can create. And, business is about an individual who don't take no for an answer. And I knew that Dheeraj is someone who will not take no for an answer, and he will figure out a business around the original idea of hyperconvergence. It was a radical idea.
Yeah.
But my style of investing was always that I want to be the first check in every company, be it like putting together the founding team of Braze or investing first money in Hootsuite. All of my investments was oriented towards finding unique individual who had this unique perspective around a certain market, and then believing in that individual and enabling that individual to go to maximum distance to take that idea and create a company around it.
We'll definitely come back to that point in your executive hiring as well. But before we go there, now we get to the next big shift. You're at Lightspeed. You've got some incredible investments. You could still have been there and being, in leadership position there. But you're watching Nutanix grow. They're in primary data. In that time, people who don't know, it felt like secondary data had also played out, because you had the data domains of the world and a number of other incredible companies that are either gotten acquired. It wasn't clear if there was room for innovation. You saw something other people didn't. Tell us a little bit about that journey, both those combined, like you identifying something in the market that you had just absolute conviction there's something here, even if the world doesn't believe. So what led to that? And then the bigger decision of, I'm going to leave Lightspeed. I'm going to build this.
I felt that I had an edge in venture capital. I was able to identify trends and companies, but I was not satisfied. I felt that my career's arc is bigger than just being an investor. And also this whole idea that I always had was, if you ask someone who was the funder of Microsoft, nobody can give you the answer. But who is the founder of Microsoft?
Yeah.
Everybody knows. So I felt at some point that Silicon Valley is about creation, about creating an enduring institution that is bigger than yourself. And what would be my contribution to the story of America, story of Silicon Valley, and how do we create an enduring institution? So that was the idea, that to go out and forget all the venture capital success or failures and start fresh and take new risk. And then the second thing was, I always believed in non-consensus markets. So as you said, backup and recovery was not sexy. Back in 2013, all the cool kids were mobile, social, Uber was all the rage.
Right.
But if you look at like backup and recovery back then, it was $20 billion market. And probably the last market in IT that had not been innovated on for almost 15, 20 years, and last potential transformation of a very large spend in core IT. In fact, this was, as I used to think, this is the last train that was leaving the station in the IT, and I had to somehow catch this train and transform this market. So that was the idea, that how do we take a A+ team and A+ technology and go after this neglected backwater of IT and make it full front in terms of like importance of data, importance of cyber, importance of what could come. In fact, the first website of Rubrik, that was our stealth website, we used to call ourselves World's Data Management Platform. So in some ways, in 12 years, we have come full circle.
Yeah, that's incredible. I got to give you credit. We might think of that start as you want to reinvent backup and data recovery and resilience, etc. But Rubrik is just so much more. Its evolution has been incredible in my mind. You started the company. Actually, walk us through that, please. You started the company. You were shipping boxes. I remember on LinkedIn, you posted a picture of the first bezel for the box.
Of course.
And from that backup appliance to the 3-4 generations that you've built in this company over and over. Walk us through that, please. Such an amazing journey.
So when Rubrik started, the backup and recovery was primarily in the data center. The cloud was starting to happen for mission critical application where businesses needed operational recovery or cyber recovery capabilities. So we had to go where the market was, and market was in the data center. So we figured that if we create a converged appliance software that did the full function, fully automated, cloud connected, we can really make an impact. But if you're making an architectural change, you can't make the business model change at the same time. So we started selling on boxes on perpetual sales model. And so perpetual license and maintenance, because we couldn't do two changes. We were already converging 3 pieces of software into a single product. So, but the idea was that was our step one. And then 3 years later, 4 years later, we actually introduced subscription. And then another 3 years later, we introduced SaaS. So it has been a journey of serving the customer where the customer is, then taking the customer on a journey to a SaaS platform, because we created, and it took us 6-7 years to build Rubrik Security Cloud, that is a single control plane for all your data irrespective of the location. Because our whole idea was that although infrastructure is fungible and commodity, that's why it's going to the cloud, data is not. And locality of data don't matter. Nobody can say my data that sits on premises, it's okay for hackers to take it away, and my data that sits in the cloud is the most critical data. Because every piece of data is equally important. So our vision was, can we create this singular control plane and policy engine that is multi-cloud, multi-location, data location independent, that provides full cyber recovery, cyber resilience?
So now we fast forward to about 2017, 18, 19 timeframe. The 2 big transitions are complete. You've transitioned into cloud, you've transitioned to subscription, you're a true SaaS service, you're the beating heart of the enterprise, you've got access to their crown jewels. Ransomware takes off. And suddenly Rubrik catapults into yet another massive, even a larger market in cyber. Was that a sudden sort of, you just watched this thing take off, so like this is the next thing? Or was this always a plan that we will just continue to roll out the next set of features and cyber will eventually become sort of our largest market?
It's a very funny thing. In 2016, we actually started working on on cyber recovery, ransomware detection. In fact, as part of our hackathon that we do every year, one of our founding engineers came up with this idea to detect ransomware. And that was triggered because one of our very early customers had one of the first ransomware attacks. It was a small hospital in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And we got a call from the CIO and he said, every system is down other than Rubrik. And I don't know what you guys are doing, but whatever you are doing, keep doing, because the only system that survived that attack was Rubrik, and they got a ransom note to pay, and they didn't have to pay. So we sent our engineers to figure out like what has happened here. And then our engineers came up with this idea that, hey, we have an architecture that is cyber attack resistant, but how about we detect in our system when these attacks happen? So we created this cybersecurity product like very early. We got the best security product award for a backup company. None of our customers would buy it.
Incredible.
None of our customers will buy it. 2017, 2018, we used to give it out for free. This is saying that, hey, cyber is the number one issue. And they said, we don't have a cyber problem. And ransomware was not as big a concept.
Right.
And then 2019 happened when the ransomware started to kind of pick up steam. And we were the only game in town with architecturally purpose-built for cyber attack with the detection and hunting capabilities built in.
Yeah, and the feature is 2-year mature at this point.
2-year mature.
That's incredible. Just this ability. I mean, you were not a small organization back in 2016 when you listened to that one customer in Louisiana. Talk to me a little bit about how do you build an organization? At that point, you must have been a few hundred people at least, that is so sensitive to these new green shoots emerging in the market and brings that back in and innovates. Because it's so easy to ignore that. You know, your SC on the account is like, yeah, that's great, but we're selling backup. I don't need to talk to the CISO, build new relationships. This feels hard. It's so much easier to sell what we have. How do you ensure that the edges of the organization are attuned to where Rubrik needs to go next?
Honestly, it's not that just the edges. The core of the company has to be oriented towards learning.
Yeah.
And how do you get learning? You can only learn when you accept that you don't know much. And when do you accept that you don't know much? When you feel not like success. And how do you feel not like success? You don't let the past impact your success. Your past successes impact your ability to think today. So we always have this thing in Rubrik that we are a company that has no finish line. So when you have company has no finish line, and you want to be always defining and redefining who you are, then you're not worried about what is making us successful today.
Yeah.
What made us successful in the first 3 years of Rubrik has no bearing into what Rubrik would become. Even what we do today has no bearing in what Rubrik would become. Because Rubrik is not what product we sell. Rubrik is not what technology that we deliver. Rubrik is about our people and our culture. And these are the only two things that will endure in the midst of age of acceleration. If you think about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, nobody knew about generative. As I was saying, like 10 years ago, ransom were not even the lexicon. Who knows what will happen 3, 5, 10 years from today? So the company has to be prepared and not be burdened by the past. Because as soon as you get burdened by the past, which could be success or failure, you are unable to see the opportunities in front of you. That's why we always say we don't want to be the prisoners of our own imagination.
That ethos is what has led Rubrik over the last few years at staying at the forefront of the AI wave. Walk us through that, please. This is now 2021, 2022, 2023, end of 2022. Such an interesting time. ChatGPT comes out. You have data. AI is reasoning on data. You have enterprise data. How are you thinking about Rubrik's role in this age of AI?
It's very interesting. As I said, when Rubrik's stealth mode website was world's data management platform. So our original thesis was that if we can bring all of the enterprise data together, including the metadata, including the application and user lineage, we can create a truly self-defined data platform. And we can supply this data for various use cases. Our first use case was backup and recovery. Our second use case was cyber recovery, cyber resilience. Third use case is identity. And so what then we realized was that in the world of generative AI, what was our biggest problem in the beginning? That we didn't have a standard APIs for people to use Rubrik's data because we are not a SQL interface. And if we created a new API, somebody has to program to that API. So you are cutting out majority of the applications. In the world of generative, what we saw was that the application interface is now vector search. So if we can convert Rubrik data into vector searchable data, and since we already have identity and we already have data governance and data classification built into it, we are the most secure data platform.
That's incredible.
And the second observation was that being a database guy for so many years at Oracle, the biggest challenge with the database was that your data format and your inference engine were tightly coupled.
Right.
So you can't take the Oracle data files to SQL Server to interpret. But LLM broke that coupling. So you can bring any data to LLM as long as it is textual. LLM can interpret it. So that dissociation meant that we didn't need to build a data engine like the inference engine. You can get LLM as the inference engine. The power comes to the data. So once we realized that Rubrik has data, identity, and apps information, which platform is more powerful to deliver the AI?
Yeah.
Once we realize that, then we say, so let's first build a vector search interface on Rubrik.
That's incredible. So if I'm a Rubrik customer today, all the data that is in Rubrik, in that data management is vector. I can run a similarity search on this.
Yes.
I don't need RAG. I don't need to build these complex pipelines. I can just run a straight...
You run a straight vector search query and we'll supply you embeddings.
Wow.
But here is the interesting part.
Right.
Since when we capture physical data, we also capture the permissions. So the application permissions is reflected as it is in Rubrik.
Right.
Other ways to extract data, ELT, ETL, and others, they lose that permissioning. So you have to re-permission the data.
That's right.
So if you think about line of business trying to access data, they want to maintain the original permissioning. The agents will maintain the original permissioning. So we have that piece. And then we acquired Predibase that allowed us to leverage this data to tune the model. So you fine-tune the application-specific model, you can do inference serving. Then this idea that Rubrik has data, identity, governance, plus inference, we can do agentic rewind. So we can do agentic inventory to agentic access to agentic tuning to agentic rewind, because rewind has been our original business. So it turns out that we have this capability to deliver the most complete agent management and operations platform.
So you have identity, you have the underlying data. It's already in a format LLMs can natively just run a similarity search on and query. You have privacy, access controls, all in place already. And you have now the ability to, if an agent is operating at 80% efficacy, you could help fine-tune that to get it to 90%, 95%,
exactly.
Wherever the enterprise needs to get it to. Where does this all lead? Does Rubrik become the agentic platform inside an enterprise that all of my automation is running on? Is that sort of the...
I can't predict the future. I only work on what is available to us today. But we have lots of ingredients.
Yeah.
And I believe that Rubrik has the opportunity to become one of the most important, if not the most important AI company in the enterprise.
No doubt. It's interesting that you've also evolved Rubrik's go-to-market. On-prem data centers to cloud to building relationships with cyber. Are you having to build new relationships and evolve the go-to-market further for this new sort of AI-focused evolution of the platform?
Here's a very interesting part. AI is primarily coming into the realm of, particularly for enterprise, in the CTO/AI engineering team realm, but it's broadly under CIO organization. And CIOs are being tasked to transform line of businesses with AI technology. We already have a very long relationship with CIOs and CTOs. With our identity and data security products, we are selling those products to CISOs. So we have already an existing relationship with CISOs. So if you think about operationalizing AI, where you need to have rewind capability, you need to have fine-tuning, it's all on CTO side. And then governance piece like guardrailing, governance, identity, data is on the CISO side. So we have a single platform that can serve both sides of the equation so that businesses can transform and create AI enterprises with confidence, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm so excited about what's in front of you, Bipul. You guys have been just absolutely amazing execution. Multi-100 million data market. You create the best platform for it. Multi-$100 billion cyber market. You've got a critical. Now you've got a multi-$trillion automation market that's in front of you. I couldn't be more excited. But to really capture this opportunity, it comes down to the people, the company, the culture you build. Let's dig into that a little bit more. You've talked about Rivet. Walk us through what that framework is. Why is it so core to Rubrik's DNA? Why is it your competitive advantage in the market?
As I said before, only people and culture is what endures. Technology change, product change. Who would have known that NVIDIA will be doing the biggest AI company? 30 years ago, it was a PCI card for gaming acceleration. Yeah. But that cultural context that Jensen fostered created this company. So I have that same firm belief. And that was our belief when we started the company. So before we hired even the first employee, we said, how are we going to work in this company? What is going to be cultural context of the company? When we hire somebody, what do they expect? How do we interact with each other? So we had to create this social contract within the company that we call culture. And that social contract is Rivet. R of the Rivet is relentlessness. We need to have entrepreneurial hunger to not take no for an answer. I of the Rivet is integrity. Don't lie to each other. Don't lie to customers. We were worried that we were sleeping in here in Palo Alto. Some of our salespeople is going to sell the product in Australia. If they're lying to the customer, how do we kind of control that? How do we ensure that everybody understands that it is not legal or illegal, but high moral standards that this company have to have? V of the Rivet is velocity. How do we ensure that we make fast decision? Our goal was that as long as we make more than 50% right decision, we'll survive to see next day. But taking long time to make a decision is going to be really, really bad for our company. Because the biggest moat for startup is not technology. It's not IP. It's time. And you have to compress time. Because the time advantage that you have because you are a counter-consensus company is going to go away if you take too long to make every decision, and every decision cascades. So how do you make sure that you do no more than 2 meetings for any decision? So that is velocity. Then E is excellence. Leave things in a better shape than you found it. If somebody comes to your reception for an interview, even if you are not an HR person, it's your job, if you see somebody, to help them. Make them feel that they met something special. And then T of the Rivet is transparency. The biggest challenge in a startup is everybody is guessing what the founders are thinking. What is board thinking? If somebody asks me to join a startup, and if I don't know how much money a startup is making and how much money they have in the bank, why would I bet my career on a startup? So if we said that if you want to bring the best talent, then we need to break this political control on information. And how do you break the political control on information? You open up your board meetings, because that's the most sacred thing in any company. So if you do open board meetings, and we first 8-9 years of the company till we started to plan for public, we had open board meetings. The impact of what open board meeting was, everyone knew what is our strategy, how are we executing, are we failing or succeeding. So the whole company started rowing in the same direction from the beginning.
I was much like you. I was also on the operational side. We were building a company at the time. And you published a blog saying, we have radical transparency. Our board meetings are open. One thing I can tell you, Bipul, the amount of pressure that decision applied to every other startup in Silicon Valley was amazing. But I totally see it. Did it drive a sense of ownership inside the larger company?
Big time. Because what happened was people didn't depend upon their manager.
Yeah.
They said, hey, what is happening? Tell me. And no manager can say this information is too safe for you. They will say, I know everything what's happening in the board. You tell me what's happening. See, what happens is, a lot of time we worry that our people may not be able to take information. But what I found in my journey at Rubrik is, when people have information, they make right decision. And there is a wisdom in the totality of the company. And so what we found was, as I said, people created new solutions. People knew that, okay, this is a friction for us in the market. Can we create a solution that allows us to remove this friction? In fact, all of our large innovations have largely come from all the hackathons that we have done.
Right. Including the ransomware story you are
starting with.
That's right. That's incredible. I'm such a huge believer in this. I think to a large extent, Rubrik has, certainly in my world, in the infrastructure world, has been the shining light on the hill that has helped drive this notion of radical transparency. I remember in the 2000s, I'm sure you remember as well, you'd often be interviewing with a startup and ask a question, what percentage of the company am I being offered, or how much money do we have, or what's our revenue, and you wouldn't get a clear answer. And I think I'm really glad that Rubrik has shown that you can get past that.
It is not an easy thing to do, because when bad time, and every company goes through good times and bad time,
right?
You have to bring people along, and when people know everything, it creates resilience in the company. It's kind of like getting a new habit. It's very hard in the beginning, and once you get into the habit, it gets easier.
Right.
In some ways, first several years of Rubrik was exceptionally hard, because to get any decision done, you will have lots of opinion. So it's not like top down, hey, this is what I'm doing and that's it. Because we are empowering people. So when you empower people, it has the negative side effect of it, that people ask a lot of questions. Sometimes decision takes longer because two or more people have some things that they want to understand.
Yeah.
So this is where we said velocity. Get everybody in the room, whoever wants to participate in this decision. But once we decide, everybody is aligned.
I'm sure your management style has also evolved. We were digging into your investing style earlier, very people-focused, looking for those exceptional folks that you wanted to back. How does that translate into your hiring style, especially at the executive level? What's your relationship? I mean, Jensen, we were talking about earlier, famously has 50 people reporting to him. How many do you have reporting to you? How do you hire these executives? How do you manage them? How do you work with them?
I made all sorts of mistakes in hiring people. In fact, in the early days, I used to look for myself in every hire that I was looking to make. And what I realized over time is that the strength is not in the same strong fit. Strength is in the diversity of thinking and approaches. You have to meet people where they are as opposed to looking for yourself in people. But then you have to create an operating and accountability context so that people can operate in that context. So you create guardrail, but you allow for variability within, or the wiggle room within the guardrail.
Right.
And meet people where they are. Because many a times we look for lack of weakness as opposed to singular strength that can propel the business. And when you look for lack of a strength, by definition, is average.
Right.
But when you look for a singular alpha, you may have to deal with some aspects that you have to adjust and compensate for. So that is my own evolution, as instead of looking for myself in the executive team, I hired an executive team and I met people where they were, and to understand their ambition, their strengths, their weaknesses. And my job number one is to amplify their strengths significantly and make sure that whatever blind spot they might have, how do I compensate for it?
This is so implementable, right? One of the things you talked about was don't just look for well-rounded individuals. You're looking for someone that spikes on some vector that you can hang your hat on and say, this person is exceptional on this one thing, and that's why, they should be part of the team. Driving that conversation in hiring discussions, I'm sure, has borne dividends here as well.
The thing that I have a very fundamental belief on is that averages should not apply to individuals.
Right.
And whenever you look for lack of weakness, you're looking for average. And we are all product of our own mind, that is a memory machine. Whatever we have patterns that we have seen in the past, we are trying to fit that pattern. But the patterns don't work in the future. And so what you have to do is you have to look at individual without going to the averages. Average of where this person came from, average of where this person's education is, average of where this person's cultural background is. Don't look for averages. Look for an individual and identify what is a clear singular strength that I need for this business, and make sure that the value system, the character piece, is aligned.
Yeah.
If the value system and character piece is not aligned, then you have a fundamental issue. But outside of it, look for a strength as opposed to lack of weakness.
I'm getting a really interesting sense for your management style. And roughly speaking, the sense I get is it's more about foundational alignment on values and the goals that we're setting for ourselves and the KPIs, but extreme amounts of autonomy and transparency and support in helping everyone achieve those goals. So sort of this notion of whatever is the opposite of micromanagement, call it macromanagement in some sense.
I call it like a doting father. So you want to your kid run in the field, right, but you don't want to turn away and go sit in your car. You want to be in the field.
Yeah.
You want to watch, but don't interfere unless something clearly is taking a left turn. So that's the kind of fundamental balance that you have to establish, and with very hard balance to establish. Sometimes you overshoot it, sometimes you undershoot it. But you need to have that self-awareness that I may not be know-it-all. I have an intuition. So don't let your intuition be overridden by experience. So apply your intuition, vocalize your intuition, say that this is where I think this could go wrong. Be careful, but don't get into the path too much. Because in some ways, if you are singularly know everything, then you are also not learning.
Yeah.
And if you're not learning, the organization is not learning.
Yeah.
So you have to also learn. And again, you have to accept that some mistakes will be made. But you have to understand that if I'm making more than 50% right decision, I'll live to see another day.
Right. I love that rubric. Pardon the pun. I want to just double click on that one last aspect before we move to the next set of questions. You have a technical background. You start this company. You've grown incredibly. One of the best CEOs, certainly I've had the privilege of knowing. That's never a linear line. Other technical founders who are building incredible companies, one of the key skills they need to master is hiring executive team, especially in functions they're not familiar with. They are technical, but other functions, sales, marketing, business development, finance, and so on. What's your advice to them on common mistakes they can avoid? Or just in general, what would you share with these founders?
So in B2B, always remember that product don't sell by itself. And there is a little bit of a misnomer in the Silicon Valley engineering community is that I'll build such a machine that the whole world will come running for this.
Yeah.
It can happen 1 in 100 times or 1 in 1,000 times. It could happen. I'm talking about success cases. Most of the time, you have to go make market aware of who you are, what are you doing, and why is it important for them? Because your customers are not getting up in the morning and thinking about you. They are thinking about their own business, their own family. They have their own lives. So you have to develop a healthy sense as a founder and great appreciation for all aspects of the business. Selling is not such a dirty thing. Marketing is not such a dirty thing. Legal is not like necessary evil, or finance is not like necessary guardrail. You have to have a healthy appreciation and understanding of why are we doing things we are doing? Why are we doing it this way? When you open up the aperture and take the approach that collectively we are creating value as opposed to singularly you are by writing code creating value, then you start to understand why sales team needs certain things. And always remember that the truth is in the market and truth is with the customer. My dad always used to say that don't sit in the office and guess what is happening. Go to the customer, they'll tell you what's happening. Because the edge is in the market. So if the founders are investing time with their sales team in the field, and as Frank Slootman says, seeing the hot and cold of competition in the field and why you and why would you matter, then you have true appreciation of how I'm going to outside in build this business.
Yeah.
So that appreciation, that openness, and really thinking that start with this point that nobody cares about you or your product.
This is so actionable, right? Like you're a technical founder. First of all, come to terms with the fact that your product's not going to sell by itself. And then do sales, do marketing, do a little bit of finance, do these things, walk in somebody's shoes, and you'll develop a deeper appreciation for what that function is like.
Exactly.
This has been fun so far, but now it's the funnest section here. I call this the rapid fire section.
All right.
So I'll go through a few questions.
Sure.
Super short list. Would love your reaction to those. Proudest day as a CEO and founder?
I am not somebody who is ever happy or say that we made it or something great happened. Because in my mind, and I'm giving a longer answer, but in my mind, everything that has positive has happened. It was supposed to happen. And everything that has not yet happened, why are they not happening?
Yeah.
So I'm in a perpetual dissatisfaction state. And that discontent is what prevents me from thinking about Proudest Day. So if I look back, I don't think I had a proud day yet. Maybe
It's ahead of
someday.
you. It's ahead of you.
It's maybe someday.
I love
And
it.
I don't feel successful also.
This is the classic founder mindset, isn't it? There's just this incessant drive. There's more to
Somebody
be done.
asked me this question.
Yeah.
I was in Singapore and
Yeah.
I was talking to a very senior reporter, and he asked me this question that when you get up in the morning and see yourself in the mirror, what do you say? And it took me some time to kind of come up with the answer, like a few minutes. But I said, I see somebody who is succeeding and failing at the same time. Because if you don't succeed, then you get disappointed and not repeat it. And if you think about you're successful, then you're not going to work hard.
Yeah.
So you have to have both feeling at the same time. When you have both feeling, then you're truly living in the discontented state that you are trying to find the truth about yourself and the company.
Now, the exact opposite of that question, the hardest day as a CEO and co-founder.
In November, I don't remember the exact date, but in November 2019, when we had a few quarters where we didn't have great results, I felt that I didn't understand what was happening to the business. We were missing our numbers, and the growth rate had slowed significantly. And I distinctly remember I was driving back from office, and I started crying while I was driving, and I had to stop the car in one of the streets in Palo Alto and to control myself, because I felt like that I put in so much time and energy and everything into this business, and it is not doing well. It is some ways falling apart, and I don't understand why. And that was the moment where I realized that maybe I don't understand every part of this business. And if I don't understand every part of the business, let me go from the fundamental first principles that in the last 5 years of history of this company, across every deal, why did we succeed and why did we lose and how long it takes for us to close the deal. And it took me like next 3 weeks, almost 18 hours a day we worked to fundamentally understand bottoms up every single data piece of the business to understand what was really happening. And that was one of the hardest times for me, as well as for the company. Obviously, then COVID happened. It amplified the problems a little bit because we couldn't even talk to our customers. But I felt like during that time, we truly understood who we were and what we were building.
Man, thank you so much for sharing that. If there's one thing I wish we had more of, was this ability for founders to connect in some way, to go, you're not alone. We all go through this, but it's such a lonely journey, though. Even here in Silicon Valley, we all live right next to each other. Our kids go to the same schools. We all talk to each other on podcasts, but yet there's not enough of this conversation. So thank you for sharing. Man, they called me guru. It's like, it feels like the wrong, you should be the one with that name. Okay, we were talking about tough times. I'm sure you need to unwind, like any of us. What do you do at the end of the day just to hit a bit of a reset, just to re-energize? What's your favorite go-to thing?
I don't ever feel like that I have to kind of separate because I'm not tired or I'm not stressed. But I do read things. In the last, I would say 5-6 years, maybe 7 years, I've stopped reading business books. I mostly read psychology, philosophy.
Interesting. Anything you can share that you would recommend to others too?
One of the books that I read, it took me 1 year to read that book and somewhat understand it, is a book called I Am That. By it's a dialogue with somebody called Nisarg Dattaji Maharaj. I thought it was the most profound book that I read because some of the concepts it describes about you and you and your mind and your body and your thinking that I thought was profound, and it took me a long time to understand it. As I said, it took me 1 year to read that book. It's not a very thick book.
I Am That.
I Am That.
It's definitely going to be on my next list. I don't get the sense you're the kind of person who'll ever retire, both because Rubrik has unbounded opportunity in front of it, and two, as we've discussed, you cannot stop. But if you were not at Rubrik, what would you be doing right now? What do you want to do?
I don't have anything that in my mind right now because I'm not somebody who's planning.
Yeah.
I don't think about future. I just do what is in front of me. And that's what I've been doing. The world has unfolded for me to go from engineering to venture capital to now at Rubrik. But I don't know. Life's arc is uncertain.
Bipul, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for this. Not only because you've shared Rubrik's journey and the founder journey, but because hopefully the listeners get a sense for who you are, just as a person, your journey, how you built Rubrik, how relentless you are.
We are building Rubrik, not built
Exactly,
Rubrik.
exactly. I was just the unrelenting focus on today, the unrelenting focus on understanding. I think it's very clear. You're a systems thinker. You're always trying to figure out exactly what is making this thing tick and how do we take it to the next level and next level and next level.
One thing I would say is now I appreciate more dwelling on the problem as opposed to looking for a solution. Because as soon as you start to look for a solution, you are in the past realm because you're trying to find some pattern to find a solution. But if you just dwell on the problem and try to understand the problem better and better and accept it, that's how solution comes about.
Avoiding the curse of the local maxima and instead understanding the global maxima. This was amazing. Thank you so much. Really
Thanks for the
appreciate
opportunity.
it. Of course.